Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Expats Portugal podcast, where yet again, myself and Rich will be previewing the Euros, talking about what's happened over the last couple of weeks. I'll be asking Rich who stood out, who's disappointed. We'll look ahead to the round of 16, which is really exciting because the tournament is properly starting now. And we'll also talk about, obviously, England and Portugal. But I just wanted to say very briefly, thank you so much to everyone that has been watching us so far. To make it very clear, Rich and I are not football experts. We're not journalists. We're not professionals. We're just everyday folk who are really passionate about football. So really appreciate all the views that we've had so far. So, Rich, what are your thoughts about the tournament so far? Now that we've got to that knockout stage, what's your feelings so far generally? How's the tournament been for you so far?
Now, I'm going to be completely honest. I have not really cared that much so far. I find this format extremely annoying.
Yeah.
I think the eight teams who have been knocked out will not be missed particularly. I think the quality of the football has with the exception of the group of death, where I think every game was a copper bottom classic practically. That was superb. The entertainment last night was absolutely tremendous. But apart from that, the quality in these games has been extremely poor across the other groups, because there's been some very weak teams who are now eliminated. I really don't like this third team getting through malarkey. I think it's a nonsense. Maybe there are ways to fix it, but I just make if you're not going to have 16 teams, have 32, and then we'll know where we all stand. That's how I feel about it, and then we can bring some of the Irish along to the party and some other some other great nation dotted around Europe who would make the cut and can join in as well. So that's what it's meant to be about. But I have to say, whilst it's been bubbling under a little bit for me. But when you see the 8 fixtures, it starts to it really starts to get exciting now, and there's some absolute crackers in prospect. There's a few sort of mismatches, but we'll see. Well, you've got to fancy at least one upset. There's always one, and that's the great thing about knockout games. So yeah, I've not been massively overwhelmed so far. I've watched quite a few games. I've watched quite a lot of the big games, but it really starts now, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, Rich. I think this format is probably not the fact that there's too many teams, but like you said, with this sort of third team and for the groups that progress, it's added a bit of unnecessary confusion and maybe diminished the drama and excitement a little bit, because we weren't really sure who mathematically was going to get through. But I agree with you, mate. I think this is really like when the tournament gets exciting, and we've got some fantastic matches to look forward to. But before we go into that, mate, who to you has stood out so far? Who to you has really who's impressed you in terms of countries and players? Who's impressed you so far?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the obvious one is Italy, because they swept aside their group. I mean, it wasn't a difficult group, but they made it look like a formality. They also rotated their squad quite nicely, particularly in the last game. They look a lot better than a lot of people expected them to. I think they before the tournament, you're probably thinking of them in sort of definitely not total outsiders, not dark horses, but they're probably 5th or 6th favourites. But now they sort of feel like they're the one team who you feel have got a real momentum from the group stage, and they've got a date with the Austrians, and you really fancy them there. So potentially in the quarterfinals already, and they've got they're buzzing. Mancini certainly looks the part and is one of the better managers. So I've been really impressed with Italy. France are interesting.
Yes.
I mean, I still think, and I still think they add up to less than some of their parts, because I don't think Deschamps is as good a manager as say Mancini. But the way they can just kind of turn it up a couple of gears and suddenly look incredibly menacing. So Italy and France have obviously looked very good. I think England have not really. We'll talk more about them later, but they've been a bit of a mixed bag. But they, who would you have predicted that we would keep 3 clean sheets? I mean, I probably wouldn't have.
No.
But although I have predicted them to keep a clean sheet in each game, that's been as we've gone through it.
Yeah,
But definitely not, given our history of calamitous group stage errors. No, not so much. So yeah, probably Italy and France. I know it's fairly obvious, but what about yourself, Michael?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Italy has shown probably the most consistent form in the group stage. They've just been very efficient and mechanical, and I think that's important when you're going into the knockout stage. And I agree with you about France. I still haven't made my mind up about them. I think there's been periods in matches, like you said, where you just get this sense that they can just go up a gear and destroy teams. But the Hungary game was fascinating because they caused them a lot of problems, and you could tell they were in a state of shock when they went 1-0 down at half time, and obviously they managed to come back. But yeah, I think you're right about France. I think probably they've got enough individual quality that will get them far in this tournament, but there's a question mark over whether they're actually playing cohesively as a team and whether Deschamps really knows who his sort of first 11 is. And then in terms of England, I mean, you're right. It's almost like a strange situation to be in, where we're with this sort of defensively cohesive unit, and now that Maguire's come back, we look even stronger at the back. But I still believe we haven't really been tested by anyone yet, and that will come possibly against Germany, and that's when we'll really see if we're as good as we think we are. But in terms of individual players, who's impressed you?
Well, I have to say, Mr. Romelu Lukaku has looked absolutely phenomenal whenever I've seen him, and the Portuguese, defence will be having some sleepless nights in advance of their game. We'll talk about that a bit later. But he's been fantastic, really, really exceptional. I think also Forsberg for Sweden has looked brilliant. I mean, RB Leipzig, they're a big club now. I guess they're a Champions League club, but he's looked excellent and very energetic. He's sort of a little bit like Fernandez at United, sort of orchestrating from the front. He's been great, and sorry, and you've got to hand it to Cristiano as well, because he is really. We bigged up Portugal quite a lot, and I would say that they have been quite disappointing. Generally as a team, maybe it's just the fact that's because they have to run everything through him, but he has really looked exceptional, and he's just got that sort of the destiny, the spear of destiny in his hand every time he plays. There's just something there is something remarkable about that guy, and he has.
I think he's a one of a kind, and I think he broke he's joint top scorer of all time in international football with 109 goals now. But to have
early quiz question, Michael.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
With whom?
Oh, I can't remember his name, but he's an Iranian footballer, isn't he?
Yeah. He's got is it Ali Dyer?
But yeah, he's outstanding. He's outstanding, and
he's been playing very well.
Yeah.
You look around the other teams. I mean, Netherlands. I think the Scottish right back Dumfries. He was exceptional in the first two games. I thought he played really, really well. I'm looking through the other team.
Who really impressed me. You might think this sounds a bit strange, but obviously I'm maybe thinking with my Norwich scouting hat on a little bit.
Billy Gilmore.
No. The Hungarian player Laszlo Kleinheisler, the little guy attacking midfielder. He's only about 5'7". He's 28, but he really impressed me, especially against France. I just thought he was an engine, and he's played in the Bundesliga before. He hasn't really played a lot, but he played for Werder Bremen for a few years, and I don't know. He's just someone that I think maybe give him a chance. I don't know, but he really impressed me. I know you've got to be a bit careful about signing players off the back of a good tournament, as Liverpool have seen, in the past. But I don't know. I really like. I got a really. Hungary is the team I've enjoyed watching the most in this tournament so far. I don't know if it's because of their fans,
their questionable politics.
Yeah, I mean, let's not get into that, right? But they just really impressed me with their hunger.
considering they're missing their best player, like university recognised as their best player, Slabowski. I mean, I think that they have really put on a show, and I actually, before the Portugal game, seeing that stadium, 60,000 people baying for blood. I thought, actually, you know what? We've been beating up Portugal. They won 3-0 in the end, but well, here we go. This is going to be a hard one. But they proved a tough nut in the other two games.
Well, Germany really struggled against them.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about the Germans. So in terms of teams that you felt have disappointed. I mean, we've touched on Portugal. We'll talk a little bit about Germany in a bit. Is there anybody else who you'd think?
I mean, I guess Croatia is the one that has disappointed me the most. But maybe that's me not really understanding their form in the last couple of years, and maybe they relied a lot on Modric. But to go from like to go from a World Cup final to the way they played, I don't know. That to me was a bit of a surprise, but maybe not. Maybe that's just the nature of how they've been playing recently. Obviously, they're not historically a country that always does well.
I mean, Scotland made them look quite good.
Yeah, but they make everyone look good.
Well, they didn't make England look very good.
That's true. And Germany maybe a little bit. You do expect a little bit more from them, but I think we spoke about this last time. They're definitely sort of reaching like a period of. I mean, they remind me a lot of the Germany in Euro 2000 that we played, which I'm hoping will repeat itself.
Yeah, I don't think they're quite that bad. I mean, that was a sort of real end of a cycle Euro 96 team. There was a lot of the same players. They were very poor and slow, and I don't know. Raphael Honigstein wrote an excellent book called Das Reboot, which I could recommend to.
Yes, you've been telling me that. I need to read that. I mean, maybe it's a bit harsh to say this, but I think France have probably been the country that has surprised me the most, in the sense they haven't really just obliterated anyone yet.
And they played who they played.
Yeah, true.
That's tough. I mean, that's the group of death, and they finished top. Without losing. I don't know. I think we'd probably be a bit harsh on them. What teams that disappointed me, I think, would be the dark horses. Everyone's hot. I mean, Poland and Turkey. I think who everyone thought, well, maybe this time they'll do something. They'll at least get out of their fairly routine groups, and they Poland. I mean, apart from Lewandowski, they've still got some great players in that team. And
they look good against Spain. I saw that game, and they did look good. But I think Spain have got problems with their. Aside from the previous game, I honestly think that was an anomaly. I think you'll see them struggle against Croatia. I really do. But they don't have a very exciting way of playing like they used to. And I think Morata, there's question marks around it.
It's all keepable. But Poland and Turkey, who we talked about quite a bit in our preview show, and they lost all 3 games, utterly humiliated themselves, looked absolutely clueless. I mean, you will play a West Bromwich Albion central midfielder. You will pay the consequences, but I mean, worked out all right for Wales at the last Euros, but it's just they were very disappointing. So yeah. So
all right. So England then. Let's talk about England. 3 matches, 3 clean sheets.
Yeah.
2 wins and a draw. I mean, it's the stuff of dreams, right?
6 shots on target in 3 games.
Yeah.
Pretty bleak.
Yeah.
Given the attacking riches. I mean, look. I think if you want to play this way, you will be judged on where you get to in the tournament. If you play sort of bad football, if we get knocked out, if we go out in the next round, well, I don't think it's is it worth it? We talked about the Croatia game quite a lot, which I think was a good result, and I think we played well, and we put Croatia in their box, and they will show that they showed against Scotland they can play a little bit. It was a bit of a dust up with the Czech Republic. The Scotland game. I think we should talk about that, because I mean I didn't think England were as atrocious as a lot of people.
No, I agree. I think Scotland were just part of the bus and did that job very well, and were very difficult to break down.
Yeah, they had a couple of very, very presentable chances, but I have to say that in London that day it rained solidly all day. If you wanted to pick conditions to suit that Scotland side, you would probably say, well, a game in the British Isles where it's been raining all day might favour them, and I think they certainly made the most of it. They certainly grafted the metal, and I think Gilmore played very well. Norwich's Grant Hanley also put in a bit of a shift, but England had some very good chances. Stones hit the post. I do think that Sterling where he was tripped at the end, I didn't think it was a penalty when I my immediate reaction was he's dived, but it does look like a penalty if you watch it back. So and that's one for Harry Kane, and England are through to the next round. At the end of that game, turned out they were anyway. So bad, but just the inability to unpick them and to sort of play. They talk quite a lot about control, this England side, but where the control seems to be just moving it around at the back. There's not.
It's square and back passing, isn't it? There and I've got a real problem with having two defensive midfielders as well, because I think it's unnecessary. I think if you have one defensive midfielder, they have enough space to control, protect the back four, and then the other guy can go forward. So I think that is a little bit unnecessary. But what do you think about that? And what do you think about Sterling and Gareth Southgate's selection in general, and do you think he's a top manager or not?
No, I don't. Well, he's not a top manager. He managed Middlesbrough. He managed England under 21s. He's one of their guys. I don't think he's a great manager, but I also equally I don't think he's terrible either. We've had in living memory managers who've done worse by England, and I would say I think Steve McLaren didn't do a great job. I actually don't think Cat Capello did a particularly good job either.
Definitely not.
But it's not an easy one. I think he's he wants us to be able to set out to keep games tight and control them, and that's we certainly look better in this tournament in terms of control than we have in any previous tournament. We really did kill those games off. It wasn't like after we took the lead against Croatia or against the Czech Republic that we really, we were under concerted pressure for long periods. Yes, we conceded a couple of a chance in probably one really good chance in each of those games. I'm thinking, against Scotland that their right back had a looping cross, then he had a shot. Probably another day Pickford doesn't save that. Against the Czech Republic, they had an amazing chance where Souček, of all players, scuffs it wide. But apart from that, they didn't have a great deal. And Czech Republic was a good result. I think Sterling just has an ability to instigate play, even if he's not the assist or he gets to the end of things. He's just been. I'm a big fan of his generally. I was worried that he was out of form coming to this tournament, but I mean, he 2 goals in 3 games. He has probably been our best player.
He's delivered. Whatever you criticise about him, and we have mixed feelings about him. I know you're probably a bigger fan of him than I am. But I wanted to ask you something, and I think we touched on this before about the style of England's play, because I do wonder whether there are certain players, especially Foden and Sterling at Man City, that they're used to playing a certain style of football, which England obviously aren't playing. Well, maybe they're not suited to the way we're playing. And I do wonder whether perhaps if we do progress, but it will be an interesting test against Germany, because I think we will for the first time be facing a team that will attack us more, whether that might actually suit us to play them on the break. And you can see a Harry Kane sort of standing on the halfway line, a bit like what he does for Tottenham, and just destroying them if he has space in front of him. So, I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, this was. I think this. We're not playing a concerted pressing game, but we have been. Undertaking the high press on occasions. It has been. It's been really visible. You've seen 4 or 5 of them go very high up the pitch, but not. Certainly not playing that press any deeper.
No.
As soon as it's gone up, out of the opponent's back line, they drop off and they're conserving energy.
The movement off the ball, that's more what I meant in the press. I don't see
with the ball.
with the ball, players who aren't on the ball moving into space.
This has been we have it's felt quite static, but you get that a lot when you play with 4 at the back and 2 holding midfielders.
Exactly.
Now I think against the Czech Republic, I mean, what he played Saka.
Tell me about Saka, because I thought that was a revelation.
Well, Saka, I've watched Saka. I've got a lot of friends who are Arsenal fans. Some of my best friends are Arsenal fans. It's he is a remarkable player. He's got bags and bags of energy. He's got a lot of good game management. He's intelligent. He stands in the right place. He will track back. He's good going forward. He's got it all. As I said in our preview show, don't think he's going to be at Arsenal for very long if they insist on being a mid-table club. He's an excellent player. He's only 19.
He was born in 2001. That's scary for us, isn't it?
Yeah, I sent you that tweet that he was born in the halcyon period in between England's 5-1 win against Germany, but before 9/11.
Yeah.
So he was born that week, so that dates us. But he's remarkable, and I'll be interested to see if he keeps his place. And I think that's more likely than Grealish keeping his place, even though Grealish played very well and showed what he can do. And Kane looks more dynamic when he's got all these runners, all these guys who go in behind, or him and Grealish can pop it behind, where you've got Sterling and Saka creating loads of space for you because they're so quick. And high energy. I mean, but I think we should move on to England, Germany, and what we think is going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, but maybe before we do that, and this kind of tees it in quite nicely, I guess, because if you read the reports coming from the German media ahead of this game, they're almost shocked that Sancho hasn't featured at all, apart from a few minutes against the Czech Republic, because of how well he was playing for Borussia Dortmund, but especially at the end of last season. So, I mean, is this a lack of guile and risk taken by Southgate? I mean, what do you think? Would you put him in there? Would you put him in there longer?
Well, look, I think I would probably think now's the time to unleash Sancho. Right. I think we've kept him sort of the book.
Like Michael Owen in '98, Hoddle wouldn't play him, and then finally we saw against Argentina.
I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility. I think if you want to give Mats Hummels, some real issues, and that German back line look vulnerable to being run at. And I think Sancho is your man to do that, and they all know how good he is, and they'll be doubling up on him. He'll pin them back in a way that I think Foden's not that as explosive in the same way. Although Foden can knit the play, and
he knows them. He plays against most of these guys every week, right, or with them, so he knows.
Yeah. That can't be an advantage. So I think the key decision is there's one attacking berth free, really, isn't there? So it's going to be Kane, Sterling, and another. And there's four options. Grealish, who I don't think he'll play because Germany will attack down the flanks, and he will want cover for the fullbacks. And Grealish, for his qualities, doesn't offer you that.
No.
I think that's why could potentially be Sancho or Foden. I think they're your other sort of prime options, or then potentially could put Saka in as well. Because he gives you that game management and can tuck and will do the dirty work. Sterling certainly will do the dirty work, which is why he's probably the second name on the team sheet after Kane now.
Yeah.
But I would think Sancho against this German defense. You just that's where they're weak. But going forward, that's the thing about the Germans, isn't it? They've got this Kimmich and Gossens who absolutely tormented the Portuguese. That 30-minute spell where they just absolutely tore them to pieces.
Yeah.
Kai Havertz is a very good player, but he to me, I might have read him wrong, but he feels like a David Silva who where the team's playing well, he suddenly looks absolutely unbelievable, but I don't know if he can necessarily drag the game by the scruff of the neck away. All
right, so if you had to stick your neck out then, Rich, how do you think this one's going to go on Tuesday?
Prediction. Well, I think England are favourites. I think they are. I think that the defensive, the performances in the group stages should give them a lot of confidence.
Yes.
Keeping those 3 clean sheets and really only conceding 3 serviceable chances in 3 games, despite not being that good going forward. And they know they've got all these fireworks on the bench. They know they've got these attacking options. And I don't think Germany will be heavily reliant on, Musiala for their explosiveness off the bench. And he did do the business the other night. He did set up the goal for Goretzka. But I think England are probably what I like to do when I'm comparing teams is I think, well, which of their players would I take?
Yes.
How many would get in? And it's not as clear as it has been in previous iterations. We've got a lot. I mean, Manuel Neuer, I think probably take Manuel Neuer.
Yeah.
But beyond that, there's not so many shoo-ins. There's going to be a discussion. I think they take quite a lot of our team. They'd love to have an informed Harry Kane. I think that's so. I fancy England to edge it 1-0. I really do. I don't think this Germany team don't have the swagger of previous Germany teams who may have been more workmanlike, not had as many attacking options, but they always had someone like Matthias Sammer at the back standing, completely unable to get around him, and they had a lot of these sort of hard, Bastian Schweinsteiger and a lot of game know-how and game management. They've kind of they kicked them all out, and then they had to bring back Thomas Muller and Hummels. And I still don't think they're absolute, top apex predators in the way that you need in the latter stages of these tournaments. So I fancy England, but the big question is Kane. If he can turn it up, we can do them. But I think if he has if he puts in another listless performance like he did against Scotland or even Croatia, I think we're really gonna struggle. You need your attacking fulcrum to work.
Yeah, and we can't keep relying on Sterling to bail us out. I mean, I've got a good feeling. I feel the same way as you. I think it's going to be a tight game, and I think we'll probably edge it. I'm just a bit stressed out a little bit because it's Germany, right? And that famous quote, 11 against 11 with the Germans always winning. So, but I don't feel as afraid of this German team as I have about others in the past. And I think Kane will perform. He will perform. I think he will perform.
Let's hope so. I think that's the big question mark. Either it's a Harry Kane hat trick and we all go home laughing, or they score. They've got a lot of good technical wizards who will make hay. I hope it's a nice dry hot day.
Yes.
And we've got the technical players now that England has never really had before at these tournaments. So
it's at Wembley again, is it?
At Wembley, 5 o'clock on Tuesday. I'm very excited. It is an exciting tie, but
I'm kind of relieved we're not playing Portugal. Otherwise, I'd have had to watch it at home.
Well, I think in this tie of these 8 tremendous fixtures we've got, there's like the 2 sort of heavyweight ties, which I think are England, Germany, and then the other one is Belgium, Portugal, which I think are real. They're 4 teams who can potentially win it, and they're playing each other, which I think is really exciting. So, I mean, I think we've probably said what we want to say about England, Germany.
I think it's just a case of. I mean, I'm just really excited like you. This just feels like such an amazing opportunity to beat them in a knockout game, which we've never done before. We've obviously beat them in '66 in the final, but we've never managed to beat them in a knockout match. So I really hope we can do that. I think that would give us a lot of confidence.
I think so. I mean, look, we'll talk about the winner plays Sweden-Ukraine. The winner of Sweden-Ukraine. I fancy Sweden to win that one.
Yeah,
we'll come on to them in a minute. So we should talk a bit about Belgium-Portugal, because that's the other.
I mean, it's been fascinating for me, Rich. Obviously, like being based in Portugal, and I speak to a lot of people here, and the consensus at the moment, I get the feeling the fans are starting to turn on Fernando Santos a bit, who's the manager, and people are comparing it to when Spain had to get rid of Luis Aragonés. After they won the Euros in 2008, that he's an old guy, doesn't really know how to sort of respond during matches. It was actually, you'll like this analogy, there was a lawyer I was speaking to who's quite a well-known litigator in Portugal, and he was saying that, and this is where the law differs from the UK, because we don't have barristers, so solicitors can actually go to court. And he was saying that a good litigator knows how to react during a trial, and can read the mood of the judge and knows when to use certain witnesses. And he was saying, that he hasn't seen Fernando Santos really demonstrate that ability to react during matches. I mean, I think Renato Sanchez has played well. He brought him back in the team for the last match, but looking ahead, I mean, I just can't see past Belgium, to be honest. I think you're right about Lukaku. And I think, obviously, with Portugal, you've always got that possibility of Cristiano. I think it was a mistake to drop Bruno Fernandes for the last game, but he obviously looks exhausted and he's not with it. So maybe he starts again if he's fit. Obviously, Joao Felix is the big disappointment. He's had an injury.
Where is he? Where is he playing?
He's had an injury, which is why he hasn't played. So he's been a big disappointment for them not being able to play. But yeah, I think Belgium are favourites. But you never know with Portugal and Cristiano, right? They can surprise us. So I mean, what are your thoughts about it and Portugal in general?
I mean, as we said in our preview show, that the Portugal first 11, when you write it down, they look pretty. It's pretty scary. And actually, compared to the Belgian team, they kind of go pound for pound with them. I mean, I think it's both the teams have got defensive problems really. Belgium, Thomas Vermeulen's playing for them. I thought he retired years ago.
Yeah,
he's playing in Japan.
Yeah,
I mean, I know he's not starting, but if they don't have him, then it's Alderweireld and the Tongan. It's these guys. I mean, they're building a team to win Euro 2016. The way it looks on paper, their defence. So they can certainly be got at. But my question is, is Ronaldo's going to be the guy who gets at them, or have Portugal got someone young, quick who plays for Atletico Madrid who maybe be better suited to that? I mean, that's what I would. That's how I'd see getting at them. But going forward, I mean, KDB is very much back with his magic wand. I mean, that's the worry, is that Lukaku and De Bruyne are absolutely playing at their peak at the moment.
Yeah, they destroy anyone on a good day. Definitely.
Yeah, can you stop them? But can you? Roberto Martinez is the manager of Belgium, so I don't think it shows the quality of an international.
You don't think he's an elite manager either?
I don't think Roberto Martinez is an elite manager. No, I don't. I don't think he's an elite manager. I think that he. You can tell by it just beggars belief, some of the selections that he's made and sort of this ragtag of players who I just don't think are. I think Belgium have got better players. I mean, I think Doku, he's obviously very interesting, but the rest of that, the core of that squad is quite old.
I think when they look back in the future, they'll be really disappointed that they didn't do more with this generation of players over the last couple of tournaments.
Well, if they win this one, I think they'll probably think that's a reasonable return. It's very hard to win these international tournaments.
Yeah, you're right.
There's always a France. There's always a Federer. Yeah. That's often the problem. That was the problem with England's golden generation, is that there were just better organised, more tactically astute teams around. What are you going to do? But it's Belgium I think are probably favourites, but there's just a niggle in me that Ronaldo just had he'll do something, or Fernandes will.
Yeah. Well, look, we're nearly out of time, mate. But maybe as a sort of a rounding off, we could both do a quick prediction of each match in the last 16, and we can compare it after and see how we got on. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds all right. So, I mean, the way I split them up is I think there's these two humdingers, England, Germany, and Belgium, Portugal. Then I think there's these two teams that you wouldn't expect, who are not amongst the favourites, but they're playing each other, which is great, which means they'll go through. Wales, Denmark, and Sweden, Ukraine, and then the other three fixtures. I think they're one-sided. Although you're making me think about Spain, Croatia a little bit. But I think Spain are probably, I think they're a bit more dangerous than people give. I think if Spain can be dark horses, then I think any team that's getting sort of 80% possession in games is going to be hard to beat for fairly obvious reasons. And you can see England, for example, struggling against a team like that. Okay, do you want to run? Go on then.
All right, go on. Let's start with the main one: England, Germany.
Yeah. The heart says England. The head says Germany are going to win.
Yeah. So, you said 1-0. Are you sticking with that?
We're reading scores as well.
Yeah.
Okay. I think Germany are going to win 1-0.
Okay. I'm going to say 2-1 England. I think we'll concede first and that will rattle us, but then we'll come back strong and Kane will get 2 goals and we'll win 2-1.
Can I stop you there? I mean, my fear is I think if England go in front, they'll win. I think if Germany go in front, they'll win. I do think, I mean, it's fairly trite stuff, but the first goal in this game, because of our inability, we're not exactly Solskjaer's United, are we?
No.
No. I think they might panic a little bit, but and Germany, I think will.
A part of me wants it to go to penalties and for us to win on penalties.
I mean,
that would exercise all the ghosts of my childhood, I think.
Well, I'm one of these sadists who loves penalties. I think it's the best way to solve it.
I have to leave the room.
I think they're an amazing idea. So much pressure. They're absolutely.
All right, okay, let's do Croatia Spain next then. Croatia Spain, what are you thinking?
Croatia Spain. I think Croatia aren't going to lay a glove on them. I think Spain are going to win 3-0.
Okay, I'll say 1-1 Croatia to win on penalties. Netherlands, Czech Republic.
Contrary, I think the Netherlands are going to get found out eventually. Again, we've got another very poor manager in charge of a big nation, but I think the Dutch will have too much for them, and so I'll go 2-0 Netherlands.
Okay, I'll agree with you. 2-0 Netherlands. Wales, Denmark.
Wales, Denmark. Oh, the party poopers. I mean, I think Denmark are gonna. It's not really been said how much of a blow it is losing Eriksson from a playing perspective, but they I think are going to have the edge on the Welsh, and they're very, very difficult to break down. They're a very stodgy team, and then I think 0-0 and Denmark win on penalties.
Okay, I'm going to say 2-1 Denmark. I think this will be the end of the road for Wales. What about Italy, Austria? Presumably that's straightforward for Italy win, comfortable.
Well, this is in my batch of fixtures that I think are pretty, So yeah, I think Italy 1-0.
Italy 1-0. I think probably Italy 1-0. And France, Switzerland, another one we think is probably quite straightforward.
I think that's if ever they're going to put the afterburners on, I think it'll be here. So I would go 2-0 France.
Yeah, I think 3-0. And Sweden, Ukraine. Before we come to the last one, Sweden, Ukraine. It's quite a close one, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I think I quite fancy Sweden the way they've been playing, and Shevchenko I think is doing a super job.
Yes,
and they've been a lot more easy on the eye than I expected. I mean, I wouldn't have had Yarmolenko. I think wouldn't have been in my sort of estimates for the golden boot at the outset. But, I mean, he's got a couple, and they've got another striker who's got a couple. But I think Sweden have got the edge. I think Isaac gives them the edge. So I'd say 2-1 Sweden.
Yeah, I think 1-0 Sweden. So probably the hardest game maybe to predict, Belgium, Portugal. We were probably both sort of steering slightly more towards Belgium, but I guess like you were saying, it really does depend on how well their two superstars perform. But what's your prediction for that one, Rich?
Well, I think Lukaku is running hot, and I fancy Lukaku against Pepe. This is the thing. Or maybe he'll keep him in his pocket, but I suspect it'll be a close one. Let's say 1-0 Belgium.
I've got a feeling that this one's going to go to penalties as well, but I think Belgium are going to win. So I think it's going to be 1-1 penalties. Belgium win, and Ronaldo will miss a penalty.
That's a very specific prediction.
Very specific.
I think if it goes to penalties, I'd fancy Portugal. Really, I really do. Courtois and Patricio. I mean, neither of them are particular penalty kings, but I think that Portuguese lineup, I bet they can all do the business from the spot.
Yeah, I mean, they did well. They did well in the last tournament, didn't they?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's probably all we got time for. Yeah. But Rich, thanks again for joining me, mate. A pleasure as always. We'll be back hopefully next time for the preview of the Man Cave on the 3rd of July. So by then, all of the round of 16 matches will have happened, and I think possibly one of the quarterfinals. So we'll have a lot to talk about. But join you guys again on that day, and thanks again for watching.